We see between 70 and 80% completion rates on our videos. If you're familiar with the world of online video, is leaps and bounds above what traditional video on the internet looks like. And it's an indication to us that residents want to hear from their government leaders. They just won't always read a 5-paragraph email. But if you record a 45-second or 60-second video, introduce yourself, explain 3 things that people should know, and close out and sort of thank them for watching, game changer in terms of engagement. The central piece that we coach our customers on is authenticity. While it's nice to produce great looking videos, the videos that do the best in terms of engagement, in terms of viewership, have to do with authenticity.
Over my years of working with local government, I've worked with many professionals who are excellent problem solvers with great ideas, but their biggest challenge is getting their message out to the community. Most of us have reached an information saturation point, and what we crave is more connection, more conversation, and, well, more humanization. I asked Mike Baumwoll to come on the show today to talk about how he helps local government get their message out. He brings a big game, a passion for community, and a desire to translate his innovative ideas to local governments. While our central topic is human-connected communication, there are plenty of sub-themes in this episode, including entrepreneurship, AI, and marketing. Mike has a voice I trust, and I believe his message is valuable. We can learn from him. Listen in to discover how to communicate more clearly and directly with your community. My name is Nancy Hess, and I'm the host of PCC Local Time. Thank you for being here. And if you like what you hear, please follow us and subscribe to our Friday newsletter to stay connected. Let's get started. Okay?
Great. Let's do it. It's nice to see you again, by the way, because I know that you're Nancy Joan. Is that right?
Nancy is good.
But I see NJ, and I'm like, oh, like New Jersey, my home state. And then I'm like, oh, no, that's Nancy. That's Nancy. So I apologize. But yeah, no, it's great to see you. And just real quick, how are you doing? Life's good?
I'm doing well. And I have a similar question to ask of you. Can you pronounce your company's name?
Yeah, it's repped.
What?
Exactly. And it's short for represented. Like in the world of sports, for example, if an athlete's being represented, they say that they're being repped. That was kind of the initial concept of it. But yeah, repped, as in ripped, with an E.
I like that. You've been busy, so maybe we could just start off with a little impromptu because I've been following you on LinkedIn. I really love the post on Mount Jackson, Virginia. I think that is a beautiful illustration. I know you have many other examples, but I just want to comment on that as a small community. And that's significant, Mike. That's an important part of this conversation. I'm very interested to know how you find a small municipality like Mount Jackson. Like, how do you meet them?
Yeah. So we have been on the run. My business partner, Mark, is in Washington, D.C. at a GovTech conference where he's speaking on a panel with Mount Jackson's town manager about the work we're doing with them and their investment in accessibility and innovation and AI, as well as video. Outside, he's going to Norfolk, Virginia to go to the VLGMA conference, which is the APMM of Virginia. That's happening tomorrow. And then I am flying out tomorrow to San Antonio, Texas to connect at the TCMA, the Texas City Managers Association conference, which is 750 people. It's a pretty big conference, but we've been to 10 conferences thus far, maybe more. A primary driver for us in terms of meeting folks like Mount Jackson are these conferences. I think what we found, and this sort of goes to the core of Rept and some of the work that we do, government folks want to shake your hand. They want to get to know you. I know you know this well in Pennsylvania, and we've experienced this at APMM and at other events. It has to be personal. They have to feel like there's a connection because the importance of you getting to know their community plays a big role in the relationship. And the deeper you can go in understanding what their problems are, their challenges, the specifics of how they operate, it makes it more personal and they feel the warmth of your relationship. Going to these conferences, Sometimes we'll have a booth. Sometimes we'll meet folks sort of, randomly at a session, sit next to somebody and get chatting about what's going on with their community. That's how we met folks like Olivia, who's the manager in Mount Jackson. I think across the board, there are themes throughout those conversations that pop up regardless of whatever state you're in. The difficulty of communicating with residents, rebuilding trust, progress and updates within a community that are not known publicly to residents. And so I think there's a big push now on one, being able to build engagement with residents at every conference. I don't care what state you're in, they're all talking about AI. And so there's a big focus on how do we leverage this? It can be a scary concept, but the more we break it down and understand how it can help communities like Mount Jackson, who are short-staffed and don't have the time and need support, the more that you can dig into the specifics and logistics of it, the easier it is to digest. And so a big part of what we do, and talking with Mount Jackson and other places like Mount Jackson, I just spoke with a number of communities in Pennsylvania over the last 2 days, and Dave in Lower Makefield about an hour ago. The AI and sort of the functionality has to be easy, it has to be practical, and it has to genuinely provide value and save time. But anyway, long answer to your question about
you're going right where I want to go. One of the things that's so valuable about this conversation with you is, and I think managers want to hear this response. What are you learning as you move around the country and attend these conferences and talk to local governments? Because they want to know, are we the norm? Are we ahead? Are we behind? With respect to AI, I see it as a defining moment in AI because it's putting the human first. In other words, we're going to use this to make our presence known as opposed to putting it in place of our presence. So I think the question is, where are we at generally as a community of local government managers? Can you say from your anecdotal experience that managers are thinking about it? Are they curious? Are they cautiously optimistic? Or are they holding back, just really not wanting to go there?
I think the managers nationally in each state, in different communities of different sizes, there's generally 3 buckets. One, you have the tip of the spear, the folks that are the most excited, the most innovative, and those that are really trying to bring in AI to their communities in a number of different ways, whether that's resident engagement, overhauling some of the operations to make things simpler, agents, AI agents to answer questions for residents. There's sort of the first bucket who are like, I want to try anything new. I kind of equate those folks to they're the first ones in line when a new Apple phone drops. They're there because they want to test it first. On the opposite side of the spectrum, you have folks who are sort of nervous, anxious about what it can do, if it's going to replace jobs, what the implications are of AI, not just for their specific jobs, but also for their communities and distancing folks from government. And then you have, I would say the majority of folks are in the middle, where it's a reflection of our community largely and nationally. There's interest, they're dipping their toes in the water. At every one of these conferences, there is at least one session where there is a sort of a high-level explanation as to what AI is available, what are the different platforms you can get access to, what can it do for you day to day, even as basic functionality around grammar and editing, which is, how many emails do we write every single day? There's a tool I use every single day called Grammarly. It plugs into your browser, and basically anytime you write something in email or some sort of document, it will provide grammar recommendations, and that's largely based on AI. I think the majority of folks are just there from an educational perspective. They just want to learn and understand how it works, is step one. And then step two is how do we take the AI and apply it to our daily lives and to our residents' lives? People are as skeptical and interested as the average person is, but there is always some fear in what it can do and what it can mean and how it can really change the relationship between residents and government.
Yeah. It's fascinating that we are at this crossroads. And I spoke to you, I don't know how many months, Dave Kretzer introduced us. I'm thankful for that. And
Me too.
Just since that time, Mike, I have had these aha moments. I think you have to take a deep breath and figure out we don't have the answers, but we are looking for ways forward. So when I see what you're doing with these communities. I think you're moving them in a direction that is very important. First of all, you're getting them comfortable with speaking. We're at a moment that I've tried to write about that I think local government, maybe managers need to grasp, is that there's a lot of information that's now going to become very public and very accessible. We have to learn how to speak about it. And what I find interesting is that, and I'm seeing this not just in what you have represented in your work, but in some other venues. I look at the media clips they're doing now, like if you have the app for New York Times, you see just ordinary people talking. How do journalists become able to speak about their stories? And then I think about myself. I would never 10 years ago have imagined that I'm doing what I'm doing now because I'm a very introverted person. To be able to take your ideas and speak about them or respond, it's really interesting that this is a skill. It's a leadership skill. It's a communication skill. And just by what you are doing with your company, you are upscaling, those skills within local governments, which is huge to what has to be accomplished within a pretty short period of time. I mean, next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see a transformation in terms of the transparency that will be required of people to speak about what we're doing at local government levels.
I couldn't agree more.
Let's talk about how you got here. Maybe if you don't mind going back and starting with Lafayette College. This is a Pennsylvania location. I don't know if this makes you feel more comfortable or familiar when you're in Pennsylvania.
It does. Spent 4 years in Easton, Pennsylvania at Lafayette. I also have family based in Pennsylvania, so I have some connection there. They were transformational years for me in my development phase, figuring out what I was passionate about, figuring out how to build community, and then really starting to narrow into like the areas of interest that I had. I was an economics and business major, and then I added a psychology minor. My parents are both psychologists, or my dad's a psychologist, my mom's a social worker, and they've had practice for 39 years of listening and sitting on couches and sharing how I feel. I knew that wasn't necessarily going to be my direct path, but I wanted to insert that into my professional experience wherever I went. So I had that major minor combo. I think I found my love for entrepreneurship and creating at Lafayette. I had always sort of had an itch, but I didn't know how to put my finger on it. I actually started the business with a friend of mine junior year in an econ class. It was a marketing class that we were taking. It might not necessarily be incredibly safe for this podcast. We were tasked in this marketing class to come up with a new product and then create a marketing plan around it. And we came up with a company called Varsity Jackets, and it was a collegiate condom company. And the whole concept was promote safe sex through school spirit. And,
Vanguard.
Yeah, you can imagine the funny names that come out of different mascots around the country and how they relate to the interaction we were addressing. But outside of the sort of fun aspect of like helping to promote a company like that on college campuses, it really lit a fire underneath me. I was really excited about the idea of marketing, creating a concept and a product that folks can use and get value and protection from, but also enjoy. The idea of a brand populated my brain, the idea of creating a business around it, figuring out the logistics of how to set it up, how to connect, how to talk about licensing, how to, all the sort of the first 3 to 4 steps that come into view when you're creating a business. That light has been on ever since. And while it was exciting and obviously funny to create that business, which I did get a lot of support from my family, my grandmother actually came up with the tagline, which was get a little school spirit in you. It sparked this love with entrepreneurship and building business. I had a couple different iterations of companies from then on, but it really started at Lafayette in Easton, Pennsylvania. Really enjoyed myself. One of my favorite things when I'm traveling back to Pennsylvania is I will strategically plan my trip to go through Easton because there's been a transformation in the Lehigh Valley in terms of business, in terms of opportunities, in terms of just like community engagement. I've seen it over time, and I love traveling back to Easton to view that and see what's new and what's next. My love started there and then blossomed.
Some of the work you've done then as a client account manager included Twitter. I'm not sure about the Rubicon Project, if you want to talk about that. I'm not familiar with that, but Twitter was a new thing. So I don't know how you figure that out. Like, it's a whole new phenomenon. And so you had to think about what you knew and how that related to this new application, new platform. And I wondered if you would talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So I started my career at this company called the Rubicon Project. And I think the first 13 years, 14 years of my career were really centered around marketing and advertising, because that's creating my own company sort of sparked the interest in building, but it also sparked the interest in like brand and marketing. And so I had the opportunity to join a startup that was on its way up called the Rubicon Project. And the concept around the Rubicon Project was they basically created like a digital marketplace for brands to be able to connect their advertisements to web publishers. And they had this really exciting technology that would automatically, like NASDAQ, where you can buy and sell stocks. It was the same concept with advertising, that you can value your ad and then be able to buy and sell placements on different web publishers. And it was all automated. And so that was a fun experience. One of the values in there is I got to watch a small company get investment, grow rapidly into multiple states, multiple countries, and then eventually go public. That whole experience was on the same interest level in terms of entrepreneurship from Lafayette. It continued my excitement. I jumped into the ad space and started to understand branding, agencies, marketing, and diving into that. And then an opportunity popped up about 5.5 years later at Twitter. With the excitement and growth of Twitter, I had to jump on board. Those 6.5, 7 years at Twitter were fantastic. It was before the transition to X. I left in 2021, June 30th, 2021 was my last day. I'll remember it because July 1st, 2021 was my first day full-time at Reps. Those 6.5 years were phenomenal. My time there was focused on the sort of business development, sales, account management world, where I was working with some of the world's largest brands to help them take a new product, a new concept that they were launching to the market, and help them communicate effectively to their customers on Twitter. And so it was largely about, how do you communicate effectively? So how do you talk to them authentically? How do you get them to potentially, Samsung was one of my customers. Their big rival was Apple. They were constantly looking for ways to switch people from Apple to Samsung. It was about connecting with people in an authentic way at the right moment, at the right time, to convince them about the value of their product.
Okay, we got to slow down here because you kind of just blew my mind. So I was thinking that work was about bringing account sales. I mean, you were definitely doing that, but you were specifically giving them advice about how to interact on Twitter in a way that would expand their customer base.
Yep, exactly.
That sounds really valuable to me. How in the heck do you figure that one out? What is happening inside your mind when you are in that work? I'm imagining that you are figuring out the landscape and trying to then convey to them, this is how you use this tool.
I was fortunate to be surrounded by really smart people. If there's one thing I can say about working at both companies, but definitely at Twitter, incredibly bright folks. I was surrounded by people that helped guide me and provide recommendations and career advice, but also logistical advice about how to support customers like Samsung or others. I think what you have to figure out in those types of situations is, what is Twitter good at? Why do people interact with Twitter? What was it about Twitter that made it exciting, that people, would spend time there? And there were a couple of different ways we thought about it. One, there was this, while the political conversation sort of was top of mind for a lot of folks, the majority of the conversation that happened on Twitter at that time were about normal topics. Actually, gaming, I think, for years was the number one discussed thing on Twitter. Like sharing feedback, updates, thoughts on new games, gaming, sports, or TV. There was this ongoing conversation about pretty much everything on the planet that happened on Twitter. And so it was about plugging in your brand, in that case, Samsung, into the conversations that were happening. It wasn't like, let's force a conversation. It was more about, how do we organically insert ourselves into conversations that are already happening by millions of people every single day, so that we become relevant and part of the conversation. There was sort of that piece, finding the always on conversation. Twitter was known for live news, like what was happening right now. Early on, they said it's where the news gets the news, because they would look to Twitter to figure out what was happening. It was the most relevant. The tagline of Twitter for a long time was, what's happening? If it happened in the world, it was being discussed first on Twitter. But it was about jumping in on those specific moments and authentically contributing to those moments, whether it was the Oscars, a horrible natural disaster, the NBA finals. Those conversations were like giant spikes, and it was about inserting yourself into those conversations. The best brands were the ones that created new conversations based on what they wanted to talk about. And so it was like, how can we get something worth talking about based on our brand to happen organically from us? And we are the creators of the origin of the conversation on Twitter.
I loved my Twitter experience about starting the conversations. I think we've lost a lot of that from that time, but I relate to what you're saying, and I can see why that was the more important aspect of it. There has to be some cohesive element of what makes people pay attention to you on Twitter. And the aspect of the immediate news was so impressive. Tunisia comes to my mind, but there's other movements that happened, and you'd go onto Twitter and see exactly what was happening in the moment. I just don't think that's happening anywhere right now.
And I think it was a special time, in the early 2010s up through 2020. I think that decade was a really valuable, interesting, and exciting moment in terms of global communication and conversation. It was fun to be a part of it while I was there. I think now we're in a place where it's more difficult to find those online communities to be able to engage and connect without fear of sparking something that might create some tension.
So I think that brings us to where you're at right now. When I see what you did on Mount Jackson, I think in an episode we can link to other examples. All of us today can come up with an example. Unexpectedly, we have a flood. We have roads we can't access. It's not just the police. We need to listen to emergency management. We need to know what the local government wants us to do with respect to ABC. And maybe there's been an explosion. We don't know what it is. What is it? So I think that the tour that you're introducing, it's not 5 clicks away. It's not, I have to click to the website to figure out, what would this be under? Would this be under utilities? Would this be under something else? Maybe I need to go to my provider. None of that. It's right there on the front page of that municipality's website on a lower link. You hope that they'll say, here's what's going on. Here's what we know. Here are the places that you can get more information from a human. That is something I've been thinking about for years before we had online availability. I would be coming home from an appointment 3 hours away, and I'd have to travel through snow or rain and wonder, can I go home the same route? Do I need to find another route? I have had numerous experiences of that over the course of my career. And to have something where I could actually go online and say, okay, am I going to be able to navigate this is critical. Or if there's been a shooting, if we think about the recent news of this past weekend, it's good to hear from our state reps. But what we most want to hear from is our local government. Are we okay here?
Right.
If there's anything we need to do.
It's home. It's our home. And so while hearing from state reps or federal is good to know, it's the most personal because it's your community. You want to make sure that we're going to be safe, that people are safe, what the sort of guardrails are in terms of how we can operate in a particular situation. It's emotional for me because I think about my son. I just moved to Pleasantville, New York, which is a beautiful little community right 30 minutes north of the city. One of the things I love the most about it is that people are leaned in. They want to be a part of the community, and it makes me want to be more a part of the community. As a result of that, I have a son in kindergarten, and I would be lying if I said that I don't at times think about, I drop him off in the morning, I like, what could happen? And I have a lot of faith in the school system and the security measures they put in place, but that's a reality, I think, for a lot of parents, that their kids have to deal with local issues like that are scary for parents. And so you will not meet a fiercer advocate in the community than a parent. They just don't mess with our kids. Bringing this back, it's our home, and it's where our kids go to school. It's where we live, places we shop, our neighbors, our friends. I think that's why we feel so connected, or want to feel connected, with our local governments and community leaders, because they're trying to make our home better, safer, greener, happier, healthier, and we want to be a part of that. When we connect with folks who are in charge of our local communities, we have more trust in the work that they're doing. And I think that's why my years at Lafayette, Rubicon, at Twitter, the central piece was authenticity. I want to hear from folks. I want to feel connected in my community. I want to be a part of the conversation. And that's been our focus at Rep. How do we humanize local government? How can we introduce my neighbor to the town manager, the local police chief, or the folks actually keeping us safe or running the operations of our city? And so it's all personal. Local is personal. The more we can connect the folks that do it, the more we rebuild trust. You can extrapolate that from being in small communities. Now I have more trust in my local government. I may have more trust in my state government, my federal government. And I really think it's bottom up versus top down.
I totally agree. I hear you saying that at the local level, if you can build trust there, there's really no need to bring any partisan politics in at the local level. So you're just basically about, am I safe? And what do I need to know? And how do I figure out this particular problem? If we can all agree on that, then we are going to feel a lot more secure in venturing forward and acting on bigger, more complicated problems. I wonder, when we think about the work that you do at REP, is it primarily a trust building mission?
I think the reason we focus on humanizing local government is because you need to know the folks before you can trust them. Our mission is to help rebuild that gap between what residents think happens every day and their expectations or misinformation traveling within communities or whatever the case is. And then what local government does. One of the things that we talk about with our customers all the time is, how do we celebrate the great work that you do? There's so much progress that gets done every single day in communities, and residents have no idea. If we can just open the door a little bit and show people like, oh, look at this great new playground we just installed. Look at these potholes we just filled. Look at these new organizations we created or new businesses that have been added to the community. All of that happens through local government. And so I think we just have to shine a light on that and shine a light on the folks doing that work. I think it's important to celebrate.
I think it'll be easy enough for listeners to check out some of the sites that we might provide for this conversation. This example you provide at Mount Jackson is under 2,000 in population.
Mhm.
If you're under 2,000 population, go check out their website. If they can do it, you can do it. And I can only imagine that at the much larger size, how much more important that can be. And I don't know if you have anything that you can share with us about how you prepare them to make those videos. They must be somewhat reluctant, but they're great. I've checked out many of your sites. They're all great. Do you coach them?
They do. I would say off the bat, there's always some hesitation. There are some folks that will never record videos. That's a small portion of the folks on staff. But there's a lot of staff members that are interested to share what they're working on, but just are nervous to do it because video is nerve-wracking and being on camera is nerve-wracking and putting yourself out there is nerve-wracking, and also prepping for it seems daunting. A lot of what we do is helping them communicate to folks in concise videos. We see between 70 and 80% completion rates on our videos. If you're familiar with the world of online video, is leaps and bounds above what traditional video on the internet looks like. And it's an indication to us that residents want to hear from their government leaders. They just won't always read a 5-paragraph email. But if you send them if you record a 45-second or 60-second video, introduce yourself, explain 3 things that people should know, and close out and sort of thank them for watching, game changer in terms of engagement. The central piece that we coach our customers on is authenticity. While it's nice to produce great looking videos, the videos that do the best in terms of engagement, in terms of viewership, have to do with authenticity. Residents have to feel like they're talking to you over a cup of coffee. If it feels like you're having a cup of coffee with them and they're explaining the logic around why they're doing it and the progress being done, those are the videos that do the best again and again. And so we've designed tools to make it even easier. We have this thing called teleprompter mode, where staff member wants to record a video, can either generate some notes, they can create notes for themselves, a little script or bullets, or we have an AI script generator that you can push a button. It reads the question and the information on the municipal website, and it will build you a script, like a first draft that you can edit and change. And then when you record it, the notes are literally right in front of your face and you can do it in 30 seconds to 45 seconds. I often reference my mom in these conversations. You're a great therapist and a great mom. One of the things that we talk about is like, she's phenomenal what she does. She's a great professional, a great mom. She has some trouble with technology sometimes. So when we build tech, it's got to be easy for my mom. That's why we came up with this idea of an AI script generator and teleprompter mode so that anybody can do it. There is a hump for municipal staff. But the moment that you create your first video and you have a script in front of you and you do it once, you realize, oh, I don't have to answer 47 phone calls because I just recorded a video and now everybody can see it. It becomes a little addictive. You're like, this is easy. And now I can start to tell my story and share the progress that is happening in my department. So it's really just about getting over that first hump. But after that, we've had communities that have been a little competitive in terms of people wanting to respond to specific questions because they like the idea of communicating through video. I guess.
Yeah, and I would add that this is a multiplier beyond that, that those skills that you're building and responding to the external sort of community is also building the same skills that are necessary for talking within the local government. So it's an incredibly valuable tool. And I applaud everything about it that suggests there is organizational learning going on in terms of how to communicate what is already there and being able to get that out to the community and also become better communicating within the community. So I think about you, Mike, when I think about building AI tools to help teams within organizations, because some of the communication is about how can we make sure we're on the same page. When somebody asks us what's going on in this department or that department, we have some cohesiveness and ability to say, you can check that out here, or this is what I think is going on, but here's how you can learn more. This is the foundational element, learning how to communicate and using some AI tools to augment your skills. And I just ask you a little bit about, in the closing, how you see both the short and long horizons. What do you see ahead? And first of all, 10 years ago, would you have seen yourself in this position, or have you evolved to a place that is exceeded where you might have imagined you'd be 10 years ago?
It's a great question. I think I wouldn't have pictured myself building, creating, running a business, especially from my days in the East End. I found a love for that. I realized I could talk about it nonstop without getting tired. My passion was just overflowing. It's evolved since then. So I knew I was going to create something. I would not have guessed I would have been in government, government technology. I mean, I was always sort of a political nerd or government nerd. I really enjoyed it. I wouldn't have thought I would be building for it. Now, being honest, I don't want to build for anything else right now. I think
feel the same way. I think this is a moment. Yeah.
No, I feel the same exact way. When you can mix your career passion with something that you're personally passionate about, that's the pinnacle for me. I love doing this because I'm interested in the work. I'm passionate about creating more cohesive, effective, and communicative communities, especially just moving to one and raising kids in one. Like, I give a damn about this going well because I want it to work. I want people to feel more connected. I think it's a necessary thing before we get to whatever the future looks like in terms of trust in government and trust in our communities. I wouldn't want to be doing anything else right now, but I would have never guessed that I'd be doing this 10 years ago based on where I was then.
But I think what you're doing is such a critical foundational skill that will help local governments assess every other AI generative tool they might add. This is the ground floor where they need to start. I really feel like you have hit on the most important element of the skill set, and one that is going to provide great excitement within the organization and the community. We can keep going on this journey. I guess I'm wondering, this is one of the bonus questions that I set out to you, just what it feels like to work with local government, coming from the entrepreneurial world, and maybe what you'd say to other entrepreneurs who are thinking, I'd like to work with local government too. What are some advice that you might give them?
I think building in this space, creating in this space is different from other spaces. There's a little bit of a culture shock that folks who jump into it figure out early on. You are dealing with people who give a shit. It's hard to find people who cared more deeply about the work that they do. You can build technology for on enterprise, private companies, or individual consumers, and it's exciting. But when you are building something for people who, it's their life mission to help their communities, it's their life mission to hold up the residents and support their community, it's just different. You have to be prepared to talk to folks who are passionate every day, and it just makes the work much more meaningful. But you have to get on their level, understand and connect, figure out what makes them tick, what makes them want to pull their hair out, and what makes them passionate and excited about the work they do. Once you start digging into the why of the work they do, it makes it easier to build products, technology, and services that can support them. But you really have to understand them first.
Yeah. And they're a diverse group. So there are many that I meet that are very interested in the technology and going forward, but you cannot take the human piece out of it. That is the line. That is going to determine ultimately whether you're going to succeed or not. What we've talked about today, and I hope you'll hang on just a moment after we say goodbye here. I really feel like we have covered a lot of ground. There's so much more that we could talk about. Did we miss anything that you particularly wanted to bring up today?
No, I think we talked about a lot of different topics. I think there's been a shift in focus, and I'm thinking about this from the entrepreneurial perspective. It's really hard to build a business, period. Whether it's a small business, whether it's a venture-backed business, it's hard regardless. And I think there's been a shift in the spotlight in businesses and entrepreneurs who are building for government over the last year or so. And AI has played a big role in that. Investors, for example, are really starting to shift their focus from, AI can be the most efficient in what areas. And I think government has really popped up as a top one for them. So there's been a big shift in focus, and we're starting to see that across this entrepreneurial funding landscape. And that's exciting. I think it's needed. It's exciting to see that transition, especially after working in consumer tech, which I did for a long time. And there was all the money over there. But now we start to see that transition to GovTech, and I think it's exciting. And it will only, for the most part, it will only improve services, technology for government leaders, and that's exciting.
Yeah, I share your enthusiasm. I also have the cautious optimism in the sense that I don't want the big ticket to be a sales, that we can simplify this, that somehow this is so simple that you don't have to do anything. There is really an importance of discerning, is this meeting our needs? Is this where we are at with our community? You don't need a huge system to begin the journey, an incremental journey over time in building that AI solution. I think this is the perfect first step.
Love to talk to you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Nancy.
That was a great conversation.